What is happening and what is up? Ho, ho, hold out your glass. Hey, do you like what I did right there? Happy holidays from me and the crew at Prometheus Lens Podcast. Starting now until Monday, December the 2nd, the All Access Pass is 30% off for Black Friday sales. So if you go to PrometheusLens.supercast.com, you'll see this button that says gift a subscription. If you click that and you click the All Access Pass, you get a 30% coupon until Monday. So you can give the gift of enlightening conversation for the holidays. And hey, if you want to be greedy and you already got the All Access Pass, but you want to take advantage of these discounts, gift yourself one.
Where's your Christmas spirit? That's better.
And I won't tell nobody. What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
All things continually lead back to serpents, dragons, fairies, Nephilim, and fallen angels.
In the distance looms a mystical mountain.
As Mike Heiser used to say, if it's in the Bible and it's weird, it's probably important.
At its peak, a great fire burns, concealing the Prometheus lens.
This development of this knowledge that's being talked about within the mystery schools.
An ancient artifact said to reveal the hidden truth within a deliberately darkened world.
There's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
The Smithsonian, they caught wind of a giant skeleton, would send their agents out to get it.
But it takes courage to move forward, to move out of the shadows, out of the unreality that we think of as reality.
We are all on the hero's journey.
Mankind has been in contact with and influenced by extraterrestrials.
Leave the sentient mound of bull feathers out of it.
You know, look at it from a different perspective.
And welcome to the show. This is the Cult of Conspiracy, and my name's Jonathan.
I'm Jacob.
And today we bring back your boy Justin from Prometheus Lens Podcast. Welcome back to the cult, brother.
Hey, thank you, man. I had my old man nap. I'm ready for a late night session, brother.
Hell yeah. That's the way we like it.
I gotta tell you, man, before we started talking about the topic at hand here. And honestly, Jonathan, for as long as you and I have been doing this program, running this show, we have never done an episode about the elongated skulls that have been found at different places around the world. It's always been a topic that I think we may have mentioned it a time or two, but we've never actually done a deep dive on it. Justin, when you told us that was what you were wanting to get into tonight, not gonna lie, I got really excited. Excited, bro.
Got bricked up again. I just got a habit of doing that to you.
Bro, I'm telling you, slightly bricked, no doubt.
No, it is cool learning about the elongated skulls and everything, because it kind of tells a little bit of a different story about, you know, our past and were our genes manipulated and that whole story, you know. And then you see, like, there are people who were trying to emulate, you know, the elongated skulls by stretching out their baby skulls and stuff like that. So I don't know, dude. I don't know what the truth is behind it, but I can't wait to hear what you found.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that throughout studies and just looking at stuff, that was one thing that really fascinated me. And what I do is, you know, Michael Heiser said it best. He never even had an original idea. It's just stumbling across and reading other people's stuff and just kind of compiling the puzzle pieces and maybe putting your opinion and perspective on the thing. So, like, just going through like L.A. Marzulli's films and his books, and being friends with like Dr. Judd Burton and Dr. Aaron Judkins, who've actually went down there to Peru and held these skulls and studied them and took notes. And it's pretty cool just being able to compile all this stuff and just kind of look at it and learn from these guys and stand on their shoulders.
Oh man, it is so great to have just a wealth of information at your fingertips, especially whenever you go down the right rabbit holes, you start following the right people that are doing like the right kind of research, and they're not doing it just for likes and shit like that, but like pure researchers. And that's really the people that we want to come in contact with. That's the people that, we admire, like, because what are we doing on here if we're not searching for truth? Right? Like, we all want to know what the truth is. I don't know where the hell we came from. We can all say that we have faith and all that kind of stuff, but you don't know. So it's cool to like come across like this kind of stuff here. And maybe it kind of paints a little bit weirder of a picture. Elongated skulls, dude. I mean, what are you going to do with that?
I was just going to say too, and where I have the whole biblical worldview and the Nephilim giants and stuff like that. It filters just like straight through there, and it doesn't matter where you go. It's the same story. It's just different verbiage and who's putting their spin, or flavor to the sauce. Because the Native Americans, they called them star people, that they came from the stars, and then that they took their women. And then here you have these giants that come in, and they're ravaging the land and stealing stuff and just murdering their people. And then at the same time, you have benevolent ones that are teaching them civilization, how to grow corn and how to cultivate their crops and build these megalithic structures. And then you go to the Middle East, and they have Oannes and the seven sages. Then you have the Nephilim giants and Genesis 6 and Quetzalcoatl, Veracocha. All these different cultures have very similar stories, and it's funny because when you look into these elongated skulls, they are found at all these locations where you have these kind of stories. It's like a little common thread that's left behind.
I was going to ask you that next. Now, I know that the image of the elongated skulls, right? Now, famously, this was found in Peru, and there's this one story about how the like Jonathan said, the parents used to strap this to their babies' heads while the heads are still forming to try to emulate what they thought the gods would look like. But I do know that there have been other elongated skulls that have been found across the world. Other than Peru, can you, like, off the top, name a few places where we found them?
They found some in Russia. They found some in Iraq and the Middle East. They found them down in South America. Trying to think, I think they even found some in China. But I mean, you find these things just scattered everywhere.
I thought that I heard something about. Yeah. Okay. See, I thought I heard something about China, but I also couldn't remember if I was getting that and feet binding mixed up, because I know China did feet binding for forever. So it's like I'm not sure which type of deformations they did to their kids. But okay, the elongated skulls too. Fair enough.
Yeah, and what's wild is you can look at them, and especially like I said, looking through Dr. Judd Burton's work and Dr. Aaron Judkins. I mean, they're anthropologists and archaeologists. They know this stuff. You can tell by looking at them, the ones that are headboarded. They have telltale signs. They got the flat spots and the indentions, and how they wrap the head gives it a different look. Some of them are more canonical, some are more elongated toward the back, like you see a lot of the Egyptian iconography. So it's kind of like a stylization type thing, but you can look at them and see, and there's telltale signs. There's a good percentage of them that they find. There is no evidence of head binding whatsoever. And as we go through some of this and go through some of my notes, I've even got documented cases of infants and fetuses still in the mother's womb that they have dug up and found these elongated heads. So this was a genealogical thing. And this shows you that the people that were head binding, this is why they were trying to emulate what they might have called their gods, their royal ruling class.
That is freaking nuts, dude. All right, so I know that you're a Christian guy. You're kind of looking at it through a Christian lens. Just out of curiosity, did they say where these elongated skull beings came from? Did they come from the sky? Did they come from the dirt? Did they come from the ocean? Or did they ever mention that?
It doesn't just come right out and say, but like there's little hints, and you got to kind of sift through them and connect the dots yourself.
Like the Native
You hear
Americans
about-
called them the Star People, or
Yeah, kind of like that, because like in the Hebrew Bible, you have the Genesis 6 event, and it sounds, almost identical to these other stories, that these angelic beings came down and bred with the daughters of men and created these Nephilim giants. And one of the best things I've ever discovered, and I'm not some scholar, I'm just a layman that likes looking into this stuff, but with modern day software, you're kind of without an excuse now. You got all these interlinears and these concordance, books and things like that, and everything's hyperlinked now. So you could sit there and go through the Bible and highlight these words and look them up and see their alternate translations and mess with the context and see, which fits better, kind of like what we talked about on the last show that I came on.
Mm-hmm.
And you find just all kinds of like little hints, like leading to these people having elongated skulls. It doesn't just come out and say it, but it's like the Anakim tribe. The Anakim was a Nephilim giant tribe that God's people, it was one of the people that they were to devout to destruction when they were clearing out the Holy Land. But their name in Hebrew, when you go through and look at that, that means long-necked people. And some of the research that these scientists and doctor's degree people have looked at these elongated skulls, their foramen magnum is pushed all the way to the back. So it's basically where your spine anchors to this skull. And even with the ones with head binding, that foramen magnum doesn't move. It doesn't adjust. It just adjusts the shape of the head. It doesn't mess with where the anchor point is. But these ones that they found that they believe are, genetic, that foramen magnum is pushed all the way to the back to compensate and balance this head. And they even said in there that it is their estimation that these heads were so irregular that they would have to have had extra long necks to compensate for the balancing of this head. So that kind of ties right into this Anakim when I was reading through this stuff.
Oh my God, dude, that is so crazy. It is just nuts how so many stories just interlink. And, not to sound like that guy, but like, I think that there's really something to the coexist bumper sticker. Not saying you got to believe every one of them, but I think that there is information that you can pull from each people's story and what they believe and stuff like that. I mean, I think that, maybe the whole picture wasn't really painted in one book. I think that maybe you pull it from multiple books. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
And that's with me is, I have a Christian worldview, but I do tend to ruffle some feathers because people, hear me say that I have a Christian worldview and that I'm a Christian, but then they listen to my show and I'm talking to like Dr. Vineet Agrawal, and he's an expert in Hindu mythology, and we're talking about their belief system and their creation stories and their flood stories. And some people they get bent out of shape because they want to isolate themselves. And I'm like, how are you going to learn anything? How are you going to find these common threads and cipher all this stuff? Because like you said, I believe that we all have puzzle pieces. None of us has it all. And so we have to sit down and see how our stories, line up and where they differ and exchange pieces with each other. That way we can get a fuller picture.
And honestly, whenever you do that, doesn't it just like more concrete the idea that your beliefs are correct whenever you find compelling, like similar stories from other lineages and from other histories and stuff like that? Like to me, that's what I would be looking for. And it seems like, I don't know why that would ruffle anybody's feathers. Like, where nobody's changing up their philosophy or their faith just by looking into other literatures. I think it's just more out of a curiosity. It's not a sin to be curious, right?
Yeah, that's been my experience. When I go digging into these other mythologies and start comparing in other religions and see all the common threads and things like that, it just solidifies my faith. It gives me like a good foundation to stand on.
Yeah. Right. So, I had a question. This is just, out of my own curiosity, and it will tie back into what we're talking about here. But just out of curiosity, I just want your thoughts on, if you had to imagine where heaven and hell are they in another dimension? Are they literally physically above and below us? Are they states of mind? What are your thoughts on that?
If I had to pick one, it'd probably be like a different realm, but of course they have physicality to them, because when you go through the Bible, you hear about the bread of heaven, the manna came down, so that's physical. And then like Timothy Alberino talks about all the time, it's like, well, then you have to ask the question, well, then they must have crops and fields to grow this grain to make this bread. They must have a grinding and processing of this manna and this wheat. And you hear about feasting and drinking, and in the Bible you have angels showing up and having meals with Abraham.
Okay.
And you have all these descriptions of heaven and also hell being like physical places, and Adam and Eve was kicked out of this place. So it's kind of like the way I always seen it was kind of like your brain being the supercomputer and your eyes being the receiver, and you have the ability to get all channels. It's like when I was a kid, that box that had the card, and you got the cheat channels. You got everything with that card, but then if they zap that card, boom, you only had 5 or 6 channels. It's kind of like at the fall, our card got zapped and we were restricted on the channels that we could watch.
Okay. And I guess to build on that, I have heard other people, people who are like, into the channeling, and people who are talking to other deities and whatever. I'm not going to make this a woo-woo episode, but one thing that I do find very interesting is how they say they do connect with them. And they say that in order to connect with these higher dimensional beings, let's just use that as a term, call them angels, call them whatever, how they do connect with them is that they have to raise their own frequency and kind of match them and meet them in the middle. And so I just out of curiosity, this is kind of something that I've been thinking about here lately, and I promise I'm going to be going somewhere with this, but whenever you have to raise your frequency to meet somebody else up in the middle, I almost wonder if all right, so yes, we perceive everything around us as physical reality, but I also think that the higher dimensional beings, call them angels or whatever, are also experiencing their version of physical reality, right? Like if they are indeed higher dimensional, as I'm sure that we don't even truly understand what the fuck that even means, but if they are, higher dimensional, they seem to have kind of a physical body, and they're surrounded by a physical plane. And that's just kind of strange. And the reason why I ask that is because I feel like there's a lot of people that think that heaven is in somewhere in the universe, and hell is somewhere beneath our feet. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I don't know personally, but I think that it's more than likely that these things are interdimensional, or coming from different realms, or it could just be, like you said, kind of just a connector to the radio that is your mind.
Let me try to, all right. On my back patio, I got an ant pile, right? Now, to an ant inside of that ant pile that might look up and see me stepping over it to go into my house, okay? I am in the same physical playing field that ant is in. However, that ant has no concept of my world, my reality, my day-to-day, the house, a car, a kitchen where I cook my food. That ant has and there's no way, even if you were to, yes, and this is a contrived example, if I was to get to the ant's level of intelligence or something where we could communicate and I could explain to this ant what my life is like, this ant would have not even in a dream state, not even imagination under ant version of DMT, has no fucking concept of what that even looks like. You see what I'm saying? But it's in the same place.
Macrocosms, microcosms. Yeah.
But we are living on the same plot of land. Not even a country mile. I sleep less than 15 yards away from this ant's whole world. You see what I'm saying? I think that the angelic realm demonic realm, if you want to call it that, is physical, quote unquote. I don't believe that our flesh suits could physically go there, right? But I do believe that they exist within the same playing field, but in a completely different realm that we have no concept of, if that makes sense.
So kind of more like the what is it? The like the Viking tree of life kind of situation.
Okay. If we're gonna take it on that, okay, the chakras. I'll speak to you in your language. Let me try to go there. Okay. So, not saying like we're living in the sacral. No, what's like mid tier? What's like belly section?
I honestly don't know a whole lot about chakras, so I don't even know why you said that was my language.
Fair me out. Okay, fair. So, but we have all 7 or 9 or whatever chakras within the same physical body, right? And they all work together. You can't have one without the other, as a matter of fact. But this chakra down here is operating at this level. It doesn't speak the same language as this chakra. They don't even operate in the same world, but they're within the same body.
So you're leaning more towards interdimensional play then?
I think it's both. I think it's, yes, interdimensional, but also a physical place at the same time. But like, what does a 6-dimensional physical place look like to a 3rd-dimensional eyeball? You see what I'm saying?
It probably,
I think it's a
and there's
difficult
somebody that
combo
tells a story. I can't remember who it was, but they explained it pretty well, I thought anyway. But they were talking about 3D worlds and 2D worlds, and they drew out 2 stick figures, a male and a female. And they said, this is Tom and this is Sally. And Tom and Sally live in their 2D world. We, in our 3rd dimension world, can get right face to face with Tom and Sally, and they can never even know we're there. And it says, and even Tom, he looks over at Sally, and he doesn't even see Sally for what she truly is. He looks over at all he sees is a straight line. And he said, and I can take this pencil, he said, and stab straight through their 2D world. He said, the only thing they're going to see is a dot, a small dot getting bigger and bigger and bigger. He said, then vanish. He said, that's kind of how I perceptualize, the spiritual realm and these other realms and higher entities and things like that. And I was like, yeah, to me, a simpleton, I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Dude, yeah, I think you explained that perfectly. I can vibe with that. Yeah.
I like that a lot. We are literally stick figures on a fucking notebook in the realm of the spirit world. And I like that a lot.
Damn, that was on it right there. I like that, kind of thought process that you just like threw a thought bubble into my head and just created a whole different world. That's awesome. But so anyway, the reason I was asking all that is because I wanted to see, some people, they say that they've been seeing UFOs. Now, I know that a lot of them are kind of government controlled. Maybe they have they definitely have some kind of technology that we're absolutely not aware of as a result of reverse engineering possible fallen craft, or just the advancement of technology as it proceeds and progresses along like through time. Could be either one of them. Could be both. I don't know. But I've been seeing, so just earlier today, I was walking outside. It was my first time going outside all day. I've been sick. I've been watching just football, and then we watched the Santa Claus movies. But like just laying on my couch basically all day, right? Just sick as a dog. And so I finally went outside earlier today. I had to go pick up like a grocery order. And I looked outside and I was like, I wonder if I can see one of these things that Electro Nick is always talking about. Like, cause I always look up.
Oh, no doubt.
Bro, I'm always looking up and I never see anything, right? Like,
hold on now. Have you talked to him about his process? Because somehow he always knows exactly where to look, like it's calling to him. Now, when you went out and looked, did you just scan the skies? Did you go off of a vibe and be like, it's over my left shoulder? Like, what happened here?
So he always talks about how it's just kind of a knowing, like kind of situation there. And so I went out, and originally Louisa was going to be going to go get the groceries. I was like, you know what? I haven't been out of the house all day today. Let me go out and I'll go pick up the groceries. And so I walk outside and I look, just for whatever reason. I mean, I probably look up every night and try and find this kind of stuff. And I look up, dude, and I see one. Finally, I saw one on my own today without Electro Nick having to hold my hand. It was crazy. And so it just looks like a tiny little star that is just moving. That's all. Like not even one of the big stars, just like one of the small ones. And at first I was like, because I've been feeling sick and fevery all day, I was like, is my perception really off right now? And so I was like, I thought it was just like the way I move my head, that's what made the star perceive to me as if it was moving. But then I stared at it and I was like, oh my God, this thing's actually moving. And it's moving at the same pace as the ones that we saw in Florida, which was pretty crazy, right? And I was like, oh my God.
First Pleiadians on your own. I'll be damned.
Whether it's Pleiadians, I don't know. I mean, all we can really do is just take Nick at his word for that. But what I saw was a seemingly look-alike star that just so happened to be traversing the night sky. And I went to go in. I was getting ready to take a step and go back into my apartment and go tell Louisa, and I wanted to get the baby wouldn't really give a fuck about that. But, I wanted to tell her. And as soon as I had that thought that I was getting ready to take a step to go back inside, dude, it disappeared. And it's completely clear sky, no clouds at all. And I was like, oh, I guess that was just for me. All right, I appreciate that. And so have you ever seen anything like that, Justin, where you just look up in the night sky and you feel like maybe there's a star moving, not like a comet, like this thing is not shooting across the sky. It's almost like going at the speed almost as like what an airplane would go, but there's no blinking lights. And they turn off and then they turn on, and I don't know. That's what Nick has told us, what he, views the Pleiadians as or whatever. But have you ever looked up and saw like a UFO or anything like that?
No, I haven't, but I've not really spent a whole lot of time looking for them. I'm sure it's kind of like the blue Honda Civic. You really don't notice them or see them until you get one or you actually start paying attention and watching for them. I always thought, that the stars are beautiful, especially like where I'm at. There's no light pollution and I'm way up in the mountains. You can go out, like if I'm going outside to smoke or something like that, and I look up and I'm, in awe a lot of times, but it's like, I love looking into astronomy and the stars and the mythology and all that kind of stuff behind it. But I'm that person, I cannot pick stuff out. So I get overwhelmed. I look up, I'm like, okay, there's the Big Dipper, obviously. But the rest of them, no, I'm just lost.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
I'm the same exact way. Like, I don't know constellations and all that other stuff. I mean, it's cool to like look into and have other people talk about and, astronomy and astrology and all that fun jazz. But I wish that I understood it more, to be honest with you, just so I can have a better understanding of what the hell it is I'm looking at out in the night sky,
We need to invest in a telescope or do a show at an observatory one night. I think we really should, especially now that you're moving back to Louisiana. This is something that can happen. I'm just saying. Well, especially one of these nights where it's a clear night and you could see a decent shot of Mars or of Saturn or something, and we could just talk that shit.
You want to? What is it? The Highland Observatory? You ever been to that one?
Yeah. I've been there multiple times. They do bonfires every Friday during the summer.
All right, we're doing it. We're definitely doing it.
Trip.
Hell yeah.
So it's I think LSU puts it on, as a matter of fact. But so all of this to tie in here, we're talking about aliens, we're talking about other planes of existence. Now, to tie back into the skull elongation, right? We're saying that we have seen these primarily in Peru, but you're saying Russia and China and all these other places. Now, do all of them have a similar story about the gods that they were trying to emulate coming from the sky, or did any of them have some sort of weird nuances that you know of?
The ones that I've looked at, I mean, there might be just little different caveats, but the overall arching theme is the same. And of course, you even have the same kind of story, but like with Giorgio, you have the ancient aliens or ancient astronaut theories or theorists, but it's the same baseline story. A higher being came down and stuck their hands in Earth and messed with the gene pool and taught them knowledge. So I mean, once again, I mean, you can fight with people over verbiage and what you want to call it, but I mean, it's pretty much the same throughout the world.
Damn. Now, you held up an image of one a minute. Actually, not an image. You have a whole model in your house.
Mm.
Bro, where the hell did you get that?
You would actually laugh when I tell you I found this on Etsy.
Nice.
Hell yeah, dude.
But this is a model, and it's to scale, identical to one of the ones in Paracas. And I've got a bunch of autographs on here. I've got Timothy Alberino, Giorgio from Ancient Aliens, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Laura Sanger, a bunch of people. But I take this with me to conferences and just, accumulate autographs. But the first one, I got it because I was going to meet L.A. Marzulli for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I got pictures and stuff, but like when I walked up with this thing, his eyes got as big as golf balls because he's actually been to Peru several times, but he's I think the only, if he's not the only, he's definitely in a small handful of people that has studied these things. Like he has held them in his hand. He has took DNA samples. He has worked with optometrists and anthropologists and all these other specialty fields and done probably the most extensive testing on these skulls. So he knows them better than anybody.
Yeah.
And when I held it out, he was freaked out. He was like, "Oh my God, where did you get this?" And then, cause he had,
he thought it was he thought you had like stole artifact.
Yeah, or in the very least, he thought that this was from a mold that Joe Taylor had made, and Joe Taylor went with him on one of his trips down there, and they done moldings, the first moldings of these Paracas skulls. So when he seen that, where it was so identical to scale, he thought it was from Joe Taylor's mold, and he was like, "How did you get this?" Because that's supposed to be the only mold in existence. So these things are not supposed to be floating around. But he was just blown away at how identical it was, because even the sadrasutral lines are missing. The mandible is missing. And then, like I talked about, the foramen magnum, it's all the way in the back, because in a normal skull, it mounts right here.
Yeah.
So he's just blown away at the accuracy.
I was going to ask you this too. The bumps across kind of like what would be right above our actual forehead, but on that thing, it's like the midway point. Those nodules, if you will, are those indicative of all of the skulls? Or you said there's been some differences, right? There's some flat ones, some dips and stuff like that. So what is that supposed to be on that?
To tell you the truth, I've not really looked that far into it, but I do know that there's all these different anomalies. It's just like a different, I don't know what you would call it, genetic markers, or defects or something like that. But what's wild is how the ones that result from head binding, they all have this sadrasutra line that all humans have, even the head binding ones.
Yeah.
But these ones that they found, they believe to be genetic, as you can see.
Yeah.
It's absent.
And I mean, thinking about that, first of all, before we continue talking about this skull, because I have so many more things to bring up, but Jonathan, if any of our listeners would like to see this alien skull, this elongated skull that we're talking about so much, because, talking about it's one thing, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. Jonathan, tell them where they can go.
You can come check us out at patreon.com/Cult of Conspiracy Podcast or rockfin.com/Cult of Conspiracy. Both of those links are down in the show notes below. If you sign up over there, you're going to have absolutely commercial-free episodes every single episode. You'll be able to get the episodes a couple of days in advance. And also, if you sign up for the Third Eye All the Way Open tier, you will have access to join us every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time with all of the rest of the Good Cult members. And if you're like us, usually the live shows are the best shows of the week, because we cover such a wide scale cornucopia of conspiracies, if you will. And it's just the best time. It's so much fun, kind of just bouncing from idea to idea. And it's the best way to be able to support the show as well. So thank you to all the Good Cult members who have already done so.
And again, we cannot stress this enough.
Commercial free.
That's very important. We know commercials suck. I get it.
Did your head just transform to an elongated skull to say that, or what?
No, I had to drop the bass in my voice a little bit, I can't just throw that out for everybody.
So
I love this fucking soundboard, dude. Anyway, okay, so back to these skulls here. You're saying that line, and what the line you're talking about here is for anybody who can't see this. When you look at a human skull, there's usually the X marker across the top, right? And that's where the skull finishes forming after the child is born, right? Whenever a baby is born, very top of the skull is still not bone yet. It's still open pretty much. And we have to be very careful with babies. It takes a little bit longer for the brain to finish forming. And that's so that the baby can easily squeeze through the pelvic canal of a woman. And I get this. You look at that elongated skull, and let's just say that this wasn't from binding. Let's say this was one of the examples like you're saying, because this doesn't have that line going down it. This was genetic. This baby was born this way, right? I don't think the skull would have any issue coming out mom. Gonna be honest with you. I don't know.
It's kind of aerodynamic.
I mean, it's kind of built for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this too. So whenever my niece was born, my oldest niece, whenever she was born, she had like her head got stuck in the canal, right?
Yeah.
And dude, her fucking skull was looking a little bit like that, right?
Yes.
And I was just thinking, I mean, instead of, hiking up some kind of rods to be able to stretch these skulls out, couldn't they just leave the skulls in there a little bit longer and have the vaginal canal stretch it out for them?
But not always the case. Depends on the childbirth, right?
Elastically go back too as the skull cap sealed.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
And that's the other thing too. If this, let's say it was, because same situation, my youngest, right? My baby boy, when he was born, my wife is a tiny framed woman with a very small hip frame. Okay, this child was over 10 pounds. Needless to say, it was an emergency C-section. Neither here nor there. After like 34 hours of trying to push, the top of his head was cone-shaped as hell. You could clearly see where like the pelvic bone started and where the rest of this child began. There was no fucking way this child was coming out of this. Let's be honest with you. Not even for the skin. The bones would have had to have snapped to make that happen, but neither here nor there.
I know you feel bad when you're looking at it too. It's like, did my sister just give birth to fucking Dan Aykroyd back in the 90s, or what's going on over here, dude?
It wasn't my first time seeing a baby with that kind of struggle, so I didn't think nothing of it like that. But my point is, though, even in the most extreme cases of that, right? I'm talking ancient times, 800 years ago, where like it may have taken a woman 3 days to have a child. Maybe that head would have been lodged there for like, who fucking knows? Fine. Let's say this was to naturally happen. That skull, give it 6 months. I should probably give it 2 months, but just for the sake of argument, an extreme case, 6 months, that skull would have formed back to the natural way it's supposed to go. And even if it didn't, even if this was that one rarest of cases of somebody who just accidentally naturally had a crazy cone-shaped head, fine, it would be a one-off, not groups of them in a tribal setting with gods that have the same type of image. You see what I'm saying? There's no way that this was by accident.
Well, I was just looking up over here, and I'll share the screen to be able to show what I've been looking at over here. I just typed in elongated skulls on Google, and it talks about all the different people who, you can find these elongated skulls with. It talks about the Maya, the Paracas, the Alcon, the Apache, Mojave, Yuma, and Pueblo Indians, along with the Mayans in Mexico, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Jamaica, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Andean region of South America. And they all are talking about a artificial cranial deformation. None of them are agreeing that any of this is any kind of alien. They're just saying, oh, it's just all artificial. None of them talk about how, what you were just talking about before, as far as like the skulls already looking elongated before they're even coming out of the mother's womb. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff that, really just makes you scratch your head, because if there is proof that a lot of these, deformed skulls were happening within the womb before being stretched out or before having rods to elongate their skulls, it would be something that either they are too dumb and they didn't do enough research, or it's a cover up. And now, why would they cover it up is my big question. I mean, do they want to cover up aliens? Do they want to cover up Nephilim? I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Justin?
And that's the thing, because these scientists and stuff, they have to be in two camps, because they're not ignorant. So it's like, they are either in straight up denial, because if you think about it, these are not the standard, they're the exception. And with any exception, there's a lot fewer count and a lot fewer number. And when, doesn't matter where you go, like we talked about all these different cultures, a lot of them talk about 7. There were 7 sages. There were 7 magi, wise men, sages that come with Oannes. When Veracocha came out, he had 7 Veracochan, like disciples with him. So it's like these true elongated ones, there was just a very small select pure blood type of hybrid being. And then the ones they chose to breed with, they probably passed some of these anomalies on to the children. So this is a very small pool. So where these scientists are finding all these head-binded ones, they're just saying, well, 90% of them can be explained. There's only a very small percentage that's not explained by conventional science. But so I'm sure there's an explanation. There is no supernatural. There is no such thing as ET's aliens. So therefore, it's just we've not figured out why yet. So it's kind of like they're in denial. But then
Cut to recently, they're admitting more and more about aliens being real. But like, hey,
yeah. And then there's a certain small handful that knows the truth, and they're suppressing that truth, whether it's to quote unquote to protect the population, not to get them freaked out, or it's they want to find out if there's any of these things left, if they can hybridize them, genetically modify them, if there's any kind of technological or knowledge type stuff they can pull from these entities. It's kind of like scientists that find a new discovery. They don't come right out and tell everybody they've done it. They repeat the process and make sure they can replicate it, and that and do all these fail-safe tests before they make sure they milk it dry before they let the public know.
Right.
So that's what I believe. I believe these scientists are either in denial because they are the exception and not the rule, or the small handful that know that just keep it under wraps.
Well, there's mainstream science. There is what is commonly accepted by the masses of whoever is controlling the narrative of science. And then there's the people who kind of go off the beaten path and they do their own research. They do their own scientific, reasonings or whatever they do. And those people are typically not looked at in a light manner. Like, those people are typically shunned because maybe they believe in the ether, or maybe they believe that, just talking about like Graham Hancock, maybe they believe that there was some kind of asteroid, and it's like those people, for some reason, they can't mesh with what mainstream science is. And I understand it, but only to a point. Like, anytime you say, well, this is actual proof that there were aliens or elongated skulls or something like that, why on earth is that so hard for mainstream science to accept? Is it because it changes their narrative? Does it make them look like they're too stupid and they didn't look into it? Does it make the people that are bringing it up look a lot smarter? And does it knock the mainstream science down a notch? Right.
Legacy and ego, because you have people that has dedicated 20, 30 years of their life to specializing in a certain field, and they are the leading expert. They don't want to let that go. If they admit that they were wrong, they lose their notoriety. They lose that authority position, and their life's work is flushed down the commode. So I think even some of these people that hold to certain ideas, they have to know that they're wrong, and or they have a high probability of being wrong. And some of these other people have good ideas or good theories or speculations. It's just they will never admit that, because then they have to step down from their throne and their life's work is meaningless.
It's just really a shame that science got political. And we saw exactly what that manifested into itself back in 2020. And basically, the rest is history. But, it's just crazy whenever you got people disagreeing with each other, even whenever you're showing actual artifacts or actual facts in general or stuff like that. I can't look at that. That doesn't apply to what I understand. It's like, God damn,
bro.
dude.
take it back to the back in the day. How many times have we read stories about like Admiral Byrd is coming to mind, but not even him, right? There's these Global Exploration Society or the World Adventurer Society, right? These really wealthy explorer types, all of them somehow just come together in England once a year to sip scotch and tell tales of their travels to Africa and their travels to the North Pole and all of these things, right? We've heard these stories. These dudes, at a certain point, they were self-funded, right? They were like nobility class guys. But eventually, they couldn't fund their own explorations to come and big dick it to their boys about what they did over the summer. So then they had to start looking for wealthy benefactors to fund their research and their exploration and all this stuff. And that's all fine and good to a point. But then they realized that if they come back with no story and no big findings and nothing interesting to talk about, they won't get the funding. And then it gets to a point to where the person writing the check says, hey, I really, really am into this type of thing, ... Name your flavor, doesn't matter. And I am really interested in finding this. So if you could, I can fund more research out in that direction. But if nothing is found there, well, we're just going to scrub the project. Yeah, the scientist who's trying to have a job for the next 15 years. Oh, we did find this one thing. I will say this. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but we found this one thing. It could be ... It all gets blurred. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like it, dude. It's just crazy. But all right, I want to get back to this elongated skull and just see, what kind of research you've really done into this. Is it understood that was the people with the elongated skulls, were they like smarter? Did they have bigger brains? I mean, does a bigger brain necessarily mean that you're smarter if you're looking at just the mass of the brain? I don't know how that works, but what would be the reason, or is it just, why would you elongate your skull?
And see, that's what I wanted to say earlier. I didn't want to interrupt you guys because you were talking about, why do scientists believe this or ignore this? And that was something that I wanted to bring up is like any good researcher, why should be one of the first questions with anything that you're looking into. Why would they do this? If this is head binding, why?
Right.
This takes a lot of time, patience, and pain.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the pressure, the constant pressure on your brain casing
as an infant,
get this deformation? Yeah, especially as an infant, and you're going to do this to your newborn child.
Yeah.
Okay. It's important. So it's no different than like I've said to people on the show. It's kind of like Morgan Wallen in the mullet. He brought the mullet back. But all it took was for him, someone famous, someone that the culture looked up to and idolized, to do something. And every single 13 to 25-year-old man cut their hair just like him and brought the mullet back. And that's what this is. This is the ancient version of the mullet.
Oh, shit.
They were emulating someone that they held in high regard and wanted to be like.
So I've heard that, and I don't know. I've heard that they did this to emulate their gods or a specific god or something like that. And that very well could be the case. I'm not necessarily shitting.
That's what they said in South America.
And there's examples of this.
Asked them.
But that also doesn't make all of the sense to me. Like, you have a god figure that has a skull like this, cool. Doing that to yourself, right? This makes sense. Doing it to your child, that it doesn't check out to me. Like, if they were doing this to try to emulate it, did they think that this would give them some sort of godlike powers? Did they think this would make them smarter? Or in what regard? Like, you know what I mean? Was it just for the look? That sounds wild to me. But again, it's because I'm looking at it from my perspective, I guess.
Yeah. It's veneration. Because if you look at the ancient cultures, all the things that they did for veneration, to us, it sounds crazy. It's like, why would you do that? But they were stretching their earlobes, the big earpieces you see and stuff from Easter Island, all that showed status symbol. The longer the ear and the bigger the holes, the higher class person you was. And when the Spaniards went down into South America, they talked about seeing amongst these people, all these dark skinned people that couldn't grow facial hair, I mean, they have their certain genetic markers. But they said amongst these people was some pale skinned people with elongated heads, and the men had full beards, thick beards like they did. And they asked the Peruvians, who are these people? And they say that they are the remnant of the Veracocha.
What is that?
They're saying that these people are the genetic leftovers of these gods. And
where was that written down?
The Spaniards that came down into Peru and South America, when they first started coming into there, they documented them in some of their these explorers' journals.
Oh, shit.
And they seen these pale skinned, fully bearded men, and they had elongated skulls, and they stood out like a sore thumb in the population. So they asked, who are these people? And that's what they said. They said that they are the remnant of the Veracochas.
So even that,
and when you look,
yeah.
And when you look into Veracocha, Brian Forrester wrote a really good book called The Path of Veracocha. And their tradition says that, Veracocha came and taught them, how to build these great, architectural buildings, taught them how to grow crops, that he was a world civilizer. It's the same filter as the book of Enoch in Genesis 6. They came down, they bred with the daughters of men, made hybrids, and they taught them all this quote unquote forbidden knowledge. They were world civilizers. But it describes this path that they took, and it has cities listed that they went to. And when you draw a line and track their path, they call that the path of Veracocha. And every single one of those cities and every single town that is in line with those cities to that path, every single one, you find megalithic structures, you find advanced civilization, and you find elongated skulls.
Whoa,
wow,
dude! So I just looked it up. I have never heard of the Veracocha before in my life, which is interesting because I feel like we cover a lot of weird shit on here. For us to never have come across that term, so
Veracochans are wild.
Yeah, I just did a little research, just went to the Britannica, which is like an encyclopedia kind of thing. And it says Veracocha, or the creator deity originally worshipped by the pre-Inca inhabitants of Peru and later assimilated into the Inca pantheon. He was believed to have created the sun and moon on Lake Titicaca. It's one of my favorite words to say, Titicaca.
Word up.
But it says, according to tradition, after forming the rest of the heavens and the earth, Veracocha wandered through the world, teaching men the arts of civilization. At Manta, which we would know is Ecuador, he walked westward across the Pacific, promising to return one day. He was sometimes represented as an old man wearing a beard, a symbol of water gods, it says, and a long robe and carrying a staff. Holy shit. How have I never
looked into that? This is the reason why the Spaniards took over South America so quickly, because in their tradition, Veracocha said that he made it to the coast, and him and his followers loaded up on a boat and sailed away. But he promised to come back, and that when he came back, it'd basically be like a heaven coming down to earth, that the golden age would return, and he was going to do all these things. So when the Spaniards came up river on their exploration, they were looking for gold. They were treasure hunters, basically, mercenaries, treasure hunters. And when they come up the river on their boat, they seen them. They seen them, these tall men, pale skin, thick beards, and they had on this chrome armor, glowing like a god, and it looked identical to their stories of Veracocha. And Veracocha said he would return, and he left on a boat. So the word spread that Veracocha had returned, and all his warriors that were with him, those were the Veracochan. Those were his apostles. So when they showed up, they welcomed them with open arms, showered them with gold and gifts. And then the conquistadors was like, hey, do you got any more gold if you're giving it up, man? And they just handed them over everything. And they took advantage of these people's cultures and their beliefs, and they just posed themselves as their gods and wiped out an entire civilization. They dropped the drawbridge and let them right in.
This is freaking awesome.
So I heard we actually did an episode about something similar. We had just talked about the whole white god symbol from the stories of, and again, it's not all of the religions talked about this white god, but the god that the Spaniards came back and said, oh, well, he was a white god or whatever, there was never any depiction of his skin color. However, there was absolutely depictions of them being taller and with a beard, which was something that these local inhabitants did not have for sure. Then I'm looking up more about the Mochi, or I'm probably mispronouncing that, their culture. They had all kinds of depictions of dudes with beards talking about that culture, which was like a Incan culture. So it's like at least the idea of these great big dudes with big beards in an area where that was not commonplace. I mean, dude, it's wild. Yo, check out that image. I forgot.
Like
I don't know
Middle
who this artist
Eastern
is.
men.
Yes, they do. I don't know who the artist is that made this image, but he's done this with every pantheon of gods, making them look like Marvel superheroes. Yo, blow that shit up. That's fucking fire.
Isn't that awesome, dude? Let's see.
Oh, I saw it. This was a couple years back on Facebook. He had done this with like the Egyptian gods and the Mayan gods and all of that, and they were fucking sick.
Yeah, dude. Why does Cataquil kind of look like what is his name?
Yeah, the stone guy.
I was thinking
Power Ring stone guy.
Oh, Thanos?
Thanos, the purple skin stone looking.
Yeah, he does kind of look like Thanos a little bit. And also, damn, I cannot remember his name. The newer guy that got canceled because he allegedly raped somebody. I don't know. But
oh, you're talking about old Silver Bullet? Not Silver Bullet. Shit, I was thinking Quicksilver, or I was thinking something else. Flash.
Oh, no. He was grooming little kids. No, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about Kang. The Emperor Kang. Kind of looks like this, yeah.
Yeah, no shit. I see it.
Yeah, this is crazy, dude.
Wild shit. So yeah, so you're saying that these they were doing it to try to emulate these higher beings or gods or something like that. Now, I mean, we have no way of knowing how these people lived their lives with these elongated skulls other than these accounts. I wonder if these people like were they okay? You know what I mean? Like with a head like that, were they like functioning?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like some of the notes I got, Brian Forrester lives down there. He's kind of assimilated into the culture. He knows the local legends. He knows the people. They trust him. They tell him the stories that's been passed down and stuff. But L.A. Marzulli went down there with a team. It was in 2013 and 2014, and Dr. Judd Burton went with him, Dr. Aaron Judkins, and they investigated these skulls, and they are the only ones that's actually done DNA samples on these skulls. And you remember how I mentioned that they sounded Middle Eastern, that they had long robes, paler skin, full beards. Well, when they done these samples, they found that these elongated skulls, the ones that were not from head binding, that they were not indigenous to South America, and that most of them came from Europe and the Middle East. They tested highly positive for the gene strand T2B, and that comes from the Middle Eastern and the Levant area.
So there were some whites.
And it goes along with their stories that they came from the East. They were pale skinned, had these beards, and it is their theory that, because of course L.A. Marzulli, he's got the biblical worldview too, and what he says is that when Joshua and Caleb and the boys were coming out of Exodus and clearing the Holy Land of these Nephilim giant tribes. Because a lot of people get hung up and they're like, oh, it's a mean, nasty God that endorses genocide. Well, every single tribe, because if you look and map it out, there are people groups and tribes that they went right by and never even attacked or bothered.
Right.
But all the tribes that were listed were giant clans and giant tribes. They were these hybrid offspring beings. So he says that he thinks that there was a great diaspora, that once they started moving through the Holy Land and taking out these tribes and just kept winning battle after battle, that these were, like the Phoenicians, they were great seafaring people, that they grabbed their stuff and packed ship, and they jumped on these ships and took off to settle and explore new lands to stay alive. And that's why you find all this same story spread out, the same kind of culture, the same elongated skulls and characteristics of these people. And you even find remnants in archaeology. Remember how I talked about with you guys last time in Sardinia? You have the same traditions of these Nephilim giants, passing the children through the fire, the Methones, dancing in the street with the hairy goat demons. Yep. And then at the northern tip of Africa, they found a big pillar with ancient Phoenician script. And it said that we, the Phoenicians, lay claim to this land because we were run out of ours by the great robber, Joshua. So it's telling you that they were pushed out and they took off on the run. And then it goes into North America, the copper mines of Michigan. That copper is unique. It's more unique, and it has distinct markers unlike any other in the world. It's 98.8% pure. But you find, the scientists have said, it's like, I can't remember how many millions, maybe billions of pounds of copper that are missing from these mines up in northern Michigan. But you find all of this copper throughout the world, China, Africa, the Levant, Europe, and they all test 98.8% pure, showing you that that's where it came from, because these seafaring people, these Phoenicians, these Nephilim tribes, were traveling to North America and mining this copper during the Bronze Age and spreading it out over the world. And now you even have it proof in DNA testing with these Paracas skulls of South America.
Yeah. Dude, let me ask you this, though. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were still saying.
Oh, but I was going to say, it said, but it happened to show that the pinpoint in all the samples, nothing nuclear was found, proving the samples had no modern DNA on them. They took extreme care, wearing suits, gloves, masks, and all at all times in the presence of the skulls. And one of the skulls tested was a baby skull that dated back just shy of 2,000 years old. But of course, this is carbon dating, and that's the best we got. But I'm not down with it. I don't trust it.
Me neither.
I like it.
It tested positive for the genome strand of U2E1, and this was European descent.
Now, when you say European, now are we talking like the Northern Europe, like Denmark? Or are we talking like South Europe, like Turkey? You know what I mean? Well, Europe's got a wide span on it.
And that's what that gene strand is, because it's so big. It's like that gene strand is like just a big hotspot circle of that general area.
Well, when you said like Persia and the Arabic area, I mean, that is such a crossroads for everything from Asia to Africa to Europe to everything in between. So, I mean, it really could just be any mixture of them. But when you said now, you're saying like the Phoenicians, excuse me. And like, it got me thinking, as we're just talking here, Jonathan, this will blow your fucking mind because it just did mine. If we are to believe that maybe these born into it elongated skull people were of Arabic and Levant descent, and maybe they were the descendants of a Phoenician tribe that just got booted out of their land or something to that realm. Jonathan, just off the top of your head, do you know which god in the Phoenician pantheon had an elongated skull?
I don't have one coming to mind.
fucking Baal, dude. Baal had the elongated skull.
Did he now?
As we are just talking about potential demonic and Nephilimic impersonations here, we got dudes on the other side of the globe doing the ball thing. So I don't know.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. I didn't know that Baal actually incarnated into physical form. I thought that was more of a demonic kind of
They
thing.
got him as a bull, and then they got him. He's got this, long rectangular head with like horns, and whether it was a helmet or that was his actual head covering, but that's how he's depicted.
And they have the showdown, as a matter of fact, between God and Baal. The idol that they were praying to was an elongated head god, and they were trying to call it to make fire happen. It was a whole thing. Yeah, dude.
Dude, let me blow your mind on top of that. Okay,
Let's go.
Because this was something that I was talking about on the last episode about Hathor and the woman in the red dress and stuff like that. Well, me and Sean ended up doing an episode. We went a lot deeper into what the hell all that is. Talking about Sekhmet, who is the daughter of Ra, and then she's a cat person kind of being, who she happened to cuddle me one night, which was very weird. I was tripping on mushrooms. It's a long story. Maybe it was her. I don't know. But anyway, so I was looking into that and looking into about how Sekhmet was like real bloodthirsty, and Ra was like, yo, you're killing all of our fucking people. If you kill everybody, there's not going to be anybody left to worship us. And so basically he fooled her into drinking all this red beer or whatever. There's like this long story, but he fooled her into drinking all this red beer, which she ended up actually liking a lot more than blood. And so whenever she woke up the next day, the story goes that whenever she woke up the next day, she came to her senses and she started feeling really bad for all the people that she was killing just so that she can, have all their blood and everything. And then she turned into transformed into a whole nother deity. She goes from Sekhmet into what is known as Hathor. And Hathor is a very interesting thing because
fertility goddess.
What's that?
She's a fertility goddess. She's like the like Gaia, Mother Earth, the protector. And
yes. Well, here's the crazy story about Hathor. So you already had who she was before, which is Sekhmet, right? Well, Sekhmet was always depicted as the cat, or like a lioness or a cat or something along those lines. Well, whenever she transforms into Hathor, she's understood to be seen as like a cow, like a bull kind of situation there, right? And so we started looking a little bit more into that story. Bro, this ties into the Bible a little bit, and I think that both of you might actually get a kick out of it, if it's to be believed. I don't know if this is confirmed or whatever. Thank you. I don't know if it's confirmed or whatever, but we were kind of just drawing some strings here, and what we found is that Hathor was allegedly who the people were building the golden calf story whenever Moses went up into Mount Sinai, right?
That makes sense. A fertility goddess as they're coming out of Egypt and they got to replenish their numbers. Yeah, fertility goddess. This makes sense.
That's fucking nuts, right? And so some people will they usually always, whenever they're talking about the golden calf, they're like, oh, it's Baal, it's Baal, it's Baal. Could it also
Not
be
always.
Hathor? Like if we're talking about Egyptian mythology, like that ties perfectly into the story.
Well, now the Egyptians didn't have Baal, right? The Egyptians didn't have him in their pantheon. They knew him as a god of another tribe, but they did have golden calves. 100%.
Yeah. And so it was like idol
Baal
worship.
shows up in that story as like a spiritual warfare thing that a lot of people miss. When they're coming up to the Red Sea, there's a part in there where God tells his people to turn. Like they're heading this certain direction, all of a sudden God tells them to turn in an opposite direction and stop, set up camp. And it's like, bro, we got the Egyptians coming after us and we're stuck in between this mountain ridge and this waterway.
Yeah.
And you want us to stop? That doesn't make sense. But it tells them to turn toward Baal Zephon. And Baal Zephon was on the opposite side of the Red Sea, but that was Baal's holy mountain. That's where his divine council assembled. And he was a storm god. He was a fertility god, and he was a storm god. So this was basically a spiritual warfare type thing where God is saying, okay, storm god, hold my beer and watch this, because I'm going to divide this Red Sea with what? A strong east wind. And you got to stand there and watch.
And then protect their backside with a wall of fire so they can safely cross.
You know what's funny about the whole What's funny
Yeah.
about that whole Red Sea, that's the Nile, isn't it?
No, the Red Sea is the Red
No.
Sea.
Yeah, the Red Sea.
They're
it's like
separate things.
a caterpillar-looking piece of water in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought that they were the same thing because I'm kind of an idiot whenever it comes to historical landmarks.
You're
and
getting
whatnot,
it mixed up. He turned the Nile River red of blood. That might be where you're getting it confused because it's around the same period. It's Moses, same dude. Yeah.
So what? Okay, perfect. So the Nile River, I just found this out too whenever I was doing that research. Remember how I told you that basically she was bloodthirsty, and so he flooded the streets with like this. It was beer, but it was dyed red. They used some kind of dye, and that's what she drank and realized, and she turned into the loving one or whatever, right? Well, it turns out that, you know, a lot of people back in those times, they would make like these mythological stories to be able to correlate with what is really going on in you know, real physical reality. And so what people said, or what I researched, what I found is that Nile River, the reason why it's red, or the reason why it occasionally gets red, it only happens during the summer. It's because it has
algae.
No, it's not an algae. It's a iron oxide. That's what it is. It's iron oxide that rolls down from the mountains, and that's what causes the whole sea to turn red like that. And isn't that crazy? Like how
the Red Sea. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't see. Now I'm getting them mixed up. I thought it was the Nile. Maybe it's the Red Sea. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's one of them that turns really red like that, and that was supposed to be like an allegory for, you know, Hathor coming down and drinking all the red beer.
I gotta tell you, dude, the story of the what was her name before Hathor? Something
Sekhmet.
Sekhmet. Yeah.
Sekhmet.
That story, and again, this is another way you could find where these cultural crossovers happen, right? Like the Thoth to the Hermes to the Mercury, right? This story kind of lines up with the core that turned into Persephone, because when she was core, she was the world destroyer. And she tore up shit so bad that her mom pretty much had to put her into a coma, and she was reborn as the bringer of spring and the life goddess of Persephone.
Oh, well,
You know what I mean?
you're talking about Greek mythology now, right?
Right. That's the Egyptian to the Greek crossover. That same story made an appearance in the Roman.
So what I was finding is that actually Sekhmet was also almost a very identical story whenever we're talking about the Greek pantheon of mythology as Aphrodite.
Oh, very interesting.
So pretty cool. I just love learning about all this, like all these old myths and stuff. It's like, dude, this, because it does tie into some of the real shit that happened here on Earth. You know, it's kind of like people that are real into astrology, right? Like there's all these different, you know, astrological stories that are happening in the sky, and you got the bull plowing the wheat and all that fun jazz, but it's really just like stories to help remember, you know,
Passing of ancient knowledge.
Well,
with their entertaining stories.
Right, but I mean, there's that, but it's also like a remembering of, all right, well, now is harvest season because the bull is doing this or whatever, right? It's all pretty cool. I love learning about all that shit. Sorry, I didn't mean to take you off of the path here. I just thought that it was interesting. Maybe it played in there a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you were asking about like one of you guys was asking about the brain case volume. You know, does the elongation of the skulls, you know, make them smarter?
You know,
that's some of the things that you find with these, because you know all humans have that Sadr Sutra. Even all the ones that they find that are from head binding have that, and they're finding skulls like this one that doesn't have it. And then another anomaly is that a small percentage of them that match the description of it being genetic, the brain case volume is increased by I think 20%. So all the ones that they have from head binding, it doesn't increase the brain case volume. It's still the same size. You're just squishing it and making it a different size. But these anomalies that they find, the brain case volume is up to 20% larger. So you have this weird shape, you have the Sadr Sutra missing, you have the brain case volume even bigger, but then you have the framing magnum, like I mentioned, that doesn't change with the people that binds their head. And then the eye sockets. If you look at this,
yeah, they're larger.
They're 30% larger. So
Yeah.
one of the doctors that went with LA down there to study these skulls, and they measured them and everything, an optometrist went with them also, and the eye orbits were 30% larger. The pupillary distance was reduced by like 8 to 10%. And so
Yeah.
the eyes would be bigger, the pupils would be bigger, and where this is closer,
That means
it
they were more
increases-
predatory.
It increases depth perception, and it could give them vision like owl. This
Yeah.
optometrist theorized that he believed these people had night vision, and
Let's
it goes
go.
along with the legends of
Yeah.
these Nephilim giants being cave dwellers. And even when you go into the Greek translation of their name, Gigantes, it means they're earthborn. They're from the earth.
Bro, the cave dweller. 100% because of the larger eyes. Night vision, like we're thinking when the sun goes down, they could see. No. They only could see in the dark. Think Chronicles of Riddick type shit. But like, okay, hold on. I didn't notice that about the eyes until you put it straight on, because as you're looking at the whole skull, it's like the larger size offsets.
Yeah, the dome takes all the attention.
It really does. Right. But when you put it straight on like that, I started to see those things. Bro, the eye sockets are bigger. They are closer together. That is insane.
My God, that would be so creepy to see in real life, dude.
We are looking at a hybrid race.
And they're predatory. That the eyes forward like that, you know, the only predator creatures have that, right? Any type of herbivore creature, any type of prey creature, their eyes go out towards the sides of their skull. Look at deer, look at different types of fish, right? Because they have to be always looking around to see if they're safe. Predatory animals, humans included, eyes go straight forward because we are trying to attain our hunt. These creatures were even higher up on that food chain than we were, if we are to believe this little bit of information here. That's wild.
Look at Jacob knowing some shit about eyes and predatory. You blew my mind with that one. I never heard of that either.
I know things about stuff sometimes.
And another genetic distinction is these little holes. Like if you look at a skull, like a normal skull, you have like little pear holes, like in certain locations, like here and down here on each side.
For like where the
And these
nerves
are-
and the sinus cavities and
Yes.
shit go in. Yeah.
Yes, they're for nerves, sinus cavities, and for veins for the circulation of blood is what these are for. And it's like the Sadr Sutra line. It's genetic markers for humanoids. All of them have them.
Right.
But these very same skulls that they believe are genetic have a whole different set of holes.
I thought you were about to say none whatsoever. I'm like, you telling me they didn't bleed?
No,
Okay.
they had a whole different set, and
So-
the holes that they had were larger. And it says that the human skull normally has 3 pairs of small holes in the front. Called one is the foramen, and it says it's just below the eye sockets and to the outside near the cheekbone.
Yeah.
And then the third one is the mental foramen, and it's in the lower jaw to the outsides. But it says almost all elongated skulls of Paracas have a 4th pair called the parietal foramen, and this is very uncommon in most human skulls. This is a set that is found bilaterally near the sagittal margin posterity, and when present, transmits an emissary view to the superior sagittal sinus, a large vein found in the human head. This view travels along the top portion of the head, beginning at the top of the skull, and moves back to the back part of the skull, and then splits away into 2, carrying blood back to the heart. It says this extra feature is to assist blood flow due to the abnormal shape of the head, meaning that it was programmed in. They were born with it to compensate for their extra long heads.
Oh, all right.
Whoa.
That's not what Google's saying. I like it.
Hold on. So just off the information before we go into what Google said, we're talking about completely different circular systems, cardiovascular systems, I should say, than the human body. Like similar, yes, but distinctly different. Something that humans do not have, no matter if it was for binding or whatever. You're not going to form new blood vessels. through your skull.
It's not
happening.
It's a different breed for sure.
A legitimate different breed. I would postulate a different species.
So, I know that this, a lot of this kind of dates back to, you said like 2,000 years, like kind of biblical times there. You know what I find very strange is that almost all the stories, if not all of the stories talking about the Bible, it never talks about like beings from other planets. Do they? Like it's always like fallen angels or demons. It's never talking about, oh yeah, there was this asshole from Saturn. You know what I mean?
Well, it only talked about, if we're going to be technical, one area of the planet for that amount of time. Like, it didn't talk about what was going on in what we now call France. You know what I mean? It wasn't talking about what's going on in China. These people allegedly didn't even know that North and South America existed, allegedly. So, like, it makes sense that they would only talk about what was going on in that area. But
yeah, but
and
it's getting involved in the verbiage too. You can't get hung up on the verbiage, and you got to remember this is an ancient text written by ancient people that is constricted to what these ancient people knew and their worldview. So it's like I even tell people all the time, it's like gods, angels, demons, all these different things. They are not of this world.
Right.
So by our definitions today, textbook wise, all of those things could be filed under the category of extraterrestrial because they're not of this world. So just, they didn't have that concept and framework back then. So they were just saying they were from heaven, and heaven was a blanket term for the place, the big place above that we don't know crap about pretty much.
Yeah.
Could very well be. I mean, if you were the dude writing it down on a scroll 3,000 years ago, and you just saw a fighter jet fly through the air, what would you write? Because we today would look at this etching and be like, oh, that's an Apache attack helicopter. Pop, pop, pop. But like the person writing it, a giant metal dragon, very loud.
Yeah.
Well, flew overhead.
Their only conveyance was chariots. So I seen a chariot of fire go across the sky.
But the only reason they would say chariot is if they saw occupants within it, right? Otherwise, or who knows, maybe they would have known immediately that noise couldn't have been from a creature. That had to be a craft of some type, and they only knew about chariots or boats. Like, who knows?
Well, yeah, somebody wasn't walking or running, right? And they're in some kind of vehicle, so that's probably the only vehicle that they were really accustomed to outside of boats, and you're not going to be sailing a boat in the sky, so I guess you would call it a chariot.
That concept to them, a sky boat, was preposterous to them. You know what I mean?
The Egyptians, their what do you call it? Their soul journey. They rode the boat, across the sky.
True. That's true.
That's right.
But that was like the limit of their imagination.
Well, yeah, and also think about like some of the Egyptian cave drawings. They look like fucking Apache helicopters and shit like that in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know when those were, carved or whatever, but I think it's pretty safe to say it was carved in there before we had helicopters.
Is it possible that was from some other species from another planet that had come to Earth and that they were depicting what they saw? Possibly. Could that be the creation of an interdimensional being or inter-timeline being? Very possible. Could that have also been the remnants of a demonic or Nephilimic technological thing that they were trying to teach mankind to pull them away from the glory of God and put them on the path of, ooh, look at the new shiny technology. We don't need God. Look, also equally possible. Who knows?
There's just so much speculation for all of this. And, it's hard to really get inside the minds of these people. All we can really do is just look at, whatever they were able to document throughout time and try to interpret it through their own words into our words kind of thing.
But then we see these skulls and fuck whatever the text is saying. These skulls ain't human, dog.
Yeah. And one thing too is like the ones down in Paracas, especially, actually across the world. But they talked about, this was the last of the Veracocha, But all these elongated skulls that they found that were the anomalies, that they thought was genetic and they couldn't explain and had so many of these differences like I'm explaining to you today. 90% of them had red hair.
Okay, I was just about to ask if we knew about I know you said the white skin earlier, but do we know what color hair? I was hoping that was coming up.
Yeah, because a lot of them, they like mummy wrapped their heads and their faces. And where this is arid desert, it's perfect for preserving these bodies. And L.A. in his book, he's got pictures. Like they actually got to unwrap one. It was like an infant skull. And I think they said it was like 6 or 7 years old. It was tiny, but it was wrapped in this burial cloth. But it was starting to decay and smell, and it was stinking up the museum. So the curator allowed his team to chemically treat this thing and soak it and pull these wraps off. And when they did, this head that they were working on had a head full of red hair.
Oh,
and I think that's it over on the right there.
Yeah.
All that red hair on top.
So this goes more into the realm of the red-headed giants, which,
Yes.
if we are to believe all of the stories that are floating and some of those that are still being said today, we could talk about the Afghanistan, the red-headed giant that was killed in the mountains in, what was it, 05,
Yes.
03, something early in the war.
Yep.
Oh shit!
From
Look,
the same area.
Alien-like skulls are unearthed in a 1,000-year-old cemetery. Looks pretty familiar, right?
It does indeed.
What is
It looks like some of these CGI puts skin on some of these.
And look at that. That's NBC. Look at this. Oh, look at that image you have in the book.
Damn. I would have
Imagine
to
seeing this.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would be pretty damn intimidated if I saw old long full head over there, dude.
Bro, could you imagine being an archaeologist? All right, you got 20 fucking years in the field. You've written thesis papers. You've taught at colleges. Like, you are a dude who knows how to dig a site, okay? And you hear about some crazy thing going down in Peru, and, you got a team available, and you for whatever reason, y'all get the contract, and you go down there, and you unearth that fucking head. Like,
My God.
how are you, as a respected archaeologist, supposed to be like, I found this non-human, dog?
Dude, this site that they found in Mexico, all these different burials, there was 25 burials, and it says 17 of them were children between the ages of 5 months and 16 years.
So I wonder if the head elongation killed them.
They can't start the head binding until 6 years of age. They have to, or wait a minute.
What?
No, 6 or 8 months. There's a certain time frame that they have to wait. They can't do it as soon as they're born. So it's like the ones they're finding that are infants and really young. It's even if they weren't in the womb, it was scientifically impossible for them to produce that effect.
And how about this right here? Of the 25 skulls that they found, or the 25 skeletons that they found at this burial site in Mexico, only one of them was a female.
Now that's interesting. I wonder if there was more males with elongated skulls than females, because maybe in their culture, maybe they're more of a patriarchy. Maybe men kind of ran shit more, so they were seen as closer to the gods or some. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, that is crazy that this, when was this article? 2012. Okay, so it was like 12 years ago they found this.
That's still wild, dude, in Mexico.
Yeah, it says, although cranial deformation and dental mutilation were common features among the pre-Hispanic populations of Mesoamerica and Western Mexico, scientists had not previously seen either in Sonora or the American Southwest. So, yeah.
Yo, when you said the Apache did that earlier, I didn't know that about. Now, I'm not like an all-knower of Native American tribes and their culture and all, but I was not under the impression that any United States Native American tribes were doing this skull elongation. That was new information to me.
And did you guys know, I'm probably going to blow your minds with this because I just recently found out about it. And I'd like to think I know my Bible and stuff pretty well. And I didn't know this. But there's commandments in the Bible against head binding, and it shows you that people were doing it. Obviously, why make the rule? But it's kind of hidden in the original language, and it's been mistranslated in the
Okay, you're going to have
English.
to break this one down for me a little bit more.
Okay.
Where is that one at?
When you go to Leviticus in chapter 19, verse 27, I got here in my notes, it says, the Bible even gives commandments not to do this head binding. The KJV says, you shall not round the corners of your heads. Many other English translations says this refers to haircuts, shaving of the head, and leaving a patch at the top or the back like Native Americans.
That's how the monks did it, man. Yeah, that's the iconic friar whatever haircut for sure.
But when you go to the Hebrew, this word for round in Strong's Concordance, its number is 5362, is nakaf, meaning to surround or encircle. This word is also closely associated to nikpah, which is Strong's Concordance 5364, which is a rope that encircles. It says the English word for corners here in Hebrew is piah, and that's Strong's Concordance 6285, which means a region, an extremity, a side, or a corner. And side is the most common that it's translated, and it's 64 times. Previously in the same chapter, but in verse 9, it uses this word, telling the farmers not to cut down the outside edges of their fields, to leave it for the poor.
Yep.
So this is God telling his people not to encircle their heads with rope, thus rounding the edges of their head. And this is talking about head binding. So it shows you that the people, even there, were binding their heads to emulate, in my opinion, these Nephilim giants who had elongated heads.
Now, that didn't
the
necessarily...
Anakim. You remember the Anakim, the long-necked people?
Yeah. So, that didn't necessarily talk about binding with a board. Not in so many words by any means, but head binding by any other name here. You're 100% on it.
Yeah. And I just found a picture in this book, if I can find it again. Not all of it was board. They got depictions of people with just rope.
Really?
Yeah, let me find it again. I just seen it.
Yeah, I just wanted to read this while you're trying to find that. It says, in the Bible, the Anakim were a race of giants who lived in Canaan before the Israelites arrived. The Anakim were a warlike people with a name that may mean long-necked or tall.
Yeah. Now, people have taken that and read the tall portion to mean that they were Nephilim giants, and yes, but also they had long necks. Who knows? Now, I wonder if that word long is being used correctly, or if it means thicker, bigger necks, because if they're holding up a bigger head, I would think they would have thicker, not longer.
Yeah, we're talking about
just me. I don't know.
We talking about Brock Lesnar here, with the
that's
insane
what
traps.
I'm thinking here.
Well, those anthropologists that studied the Veracocha skulls, that foramen magnum, where it mounted at, that's what they said before they even knew about. I mean, these guys weren't scholars. They didn't know about the Anakim or any of that stuff. They just said, with this head, the way it's shaped and where it mounts, they would have to have an extra long neck to counterbalance the weight of this head.
Now, that's true, too. You could look at where it goes into the skull. It goes higher up for where where our brainstem connects. That's where their throat was. So with that, maybe you're right. Adding an extra 2 or 3, even 6 inches to a neck to in theory, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you looked at it, oh, no shit. Look at that binding with rope.
Literally squeezing, for the listeners. It looks like just some ropes that are connecting from the forehead to almost the back below the knot of your head, and it's squeezing it in almost like a cone.
Into a cone shape, 100%. Look at that. I mean, the same way that I tie a bandana around my head, but to do that with ropes and then every day have them tightened and retightened throughout the day. And we're going to do that for about 10 years or so to make sure it really sticks. And bro, what?
It's really it's almost like ancient, like when you would get braces, but for your head. Like, because whenever you go in for braces, you got to keep on getting them tightened and tightened and tightened.
Mm-hmm.
And very similar that way. That is interesting.
And the most craziest one, they actually gave a name for, and they called this, and this was a skeleton. This wasn't just a head. This was a body with an elongated skull, and they named it Waiki. Okay. And it says that this one was a very strange, elongated infant, less than 20 inches long, had an elongated head, large eye sockets, and the fontanelle, the soft cap that we were talking about earlier, was still open. But it had molars, bro.
What? A little baby?
And I got tons of pictures I'm going to show you. And it says that this was definitely not a dwarf because the bones were thin and small. And it was found on this path of Veracocha.
Okay. So I'm glad that it mentioned the dwarfism. Because you could tell if somebody had dwarfism based off of bone density, right? And very basic anatomical look-alike. So, I mean, I get it. This baby was not born.
Oh, my God. Look at this shit.
And the skull hadn't completely closed up, right? So, I mean, and you said it was a newborn or it actually hadn't been born?
Yeah.
Like it was a stillborn.
It was a newborn.
A newborn that died for whatever reason, complications, especially back in that day and age. Like that was very common to have a baby die in childbirth.
A newborn with molars, though. That ain't happening.
Molars. And with that, look at those eye sockets, dude.
Oh my God, dude. These are Nephilim fucking babies?
Look, and you hear stories of babies being born with teeth, like maybe one or two popping out, and that's like crazy. That's
look at
insanity.
the proportion.
Yeah.
Look at the head versus the body frame. The head is almost as big as the torso, bro.
Yeah, no, that's fucking insane.
Oh my God, that is crazy.
And like, okay, people, I know that babies have a slightly larger head at birth.
Not like that.
Whole thing. No, not like this.
No,
not even because of the shape. We're talking the width of the jaw of the skull as it relates to the shoulders and rib cage. There's no fucking way.
That is so creepy. Jacob, imagine you wake up, you go, you had to take a leak, and middle of the night, you got to go take a leak, maybe go get a little glass of water. You see that little fucker running down in your hallways. What are you doing?
Oh, I'm shooting it. Like, I'm just going to be straight up. I stay with it on me, even to go to the bathroom.
Cemetery. Now I want to play with you.
Nah.
Yeah, I got silver bullets. We're going to fire it all at it.
What was that kid's name? It was Sebastian, wasn't it?
Gage,
yeah.
Yo, but that is why, and that's a newborn, and that doesn't have the crack down the skull like a human would have.
Yep.
Whoa. And it has those extra holes.
Mm-hmm.
That is freaking nutty. Well, I wanted to read this. This is, it says, as far as the Anakim, it says that whenever it's talking about its descendants and whatnot, but it says the Anakim were the descendants of Enoch, the son of Arba, and were thought by the Hebrews to be descended from the Nephilim.
Well, yeah, remember when I come on your guys' show and I talked about Esau interbreeding with the Horites?
Yep.
And he bred, his nephew was Amalek, who his name birthed the whole tribe called the Amalekites, which in Hebrew means the blood lickers.
And they had to be slaughtered.
The blood
The Amalekites, wasn't there King Agag?
Yes. Yeah,
that's the one that the prophet had to
slit his throat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The prophet himself, because that's how religious men get down in the old days.
That
Maybe
is
following the word.
So freaky, dude. That little bastard.
Yeah, Waiki. Yeah, man,
he was
it's freaky looking.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the baby.
Oh yeah, I was just talking about the baby. That's gonna haunt my fucking dreams, bro. Like that is a scary picture right there.
No, imagine a whole race of them, dude.
No.
Imagine a whole army of them. As a matter of fact, a whole tribe.
And this one is pretty wild too, guys. You'll appreciate this one. And I got pictures too of this. And guys that's listening and not seeing this, this is L.A. Marzulli's book. And this book, it's about $60, but it's like 500 pages, full color pictures of all of his explorations. And it's called On the Trail of the Nephilim.
the quality of those pictures, print ain't cheap. Okay, just for the
Yeah.
quality of the pictures inside that book, I could tell you $60 is, I mean, that ain't like your boys getting rich off it.
Well, especially
Yeah.
that type of paper too. That's like a glossy paper. That's more expensive in and
Yeah.
of itself
That's
too.
what I'm saying. Your boy, he put his time and effort into this book. I'm giving the props for sure.
Oh yeah, dude.
But in there, man, it says that they found a journal written in 1842 called the Peruvian Antiquities. And it talks about these elongated skulls even back then, that they were finding them and researching them and asking these questions. What were these things? And in this journal, they were theorizing, back and forth what they thought it was. But it says that in this journal, that even back then, that they proposed that this was a different race of people.
Yeah, man.
That and they even said that the Peruvian people were emulating this race and boarding their heads and their children's heads to look like them. But an apostolic bull, a paper bull from the Catholic Church was passed in the 16th century prohibiting the binding of heads. And in this journal, they mentioned finding an elongated skull that was a child. But then in the same tomb, found a mummy of a woman with an elongated fetus still in the womb.
Whoa. Now, real quick, a papal bull, just in case anybody didn't know, call that a Catholic law. That's essentially the short and dirty of it. It's when the Pope makes a decree, and this is not to be taken away when the new Pope comes in. This is supposed to be a from now on, etch this bitch in stone kind of thing. It's not to be taken lightly. So for the Pope to have to come out in the 1500s and say, hey, y'all don't bind anybody's skulls. Bro, who the fuck was binding skulls for the Pope to make that little proclamation? Except they were still doing it, come to find out.
You said that was in the 1500s, Justin?
It was a 16th century papal bull.
Yeah, so
okay.
1500s.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So 500 years ago, people were doing this shit.
Yeah, and then they were talking about in the 1840s. Let this one marinate, bro. Right before the American Civil War, they had exploration teams in Peru asking why the fuck they're strapping boards to their babies' heads. That's fucking wild.
That is so random to find something like that. And
like the Civil War, we had locomotives and shit, dude.
Right. Well, I found this right here, and some people were speculating as to why they would have done that if not the ones that are born that way, but the ones that were trying to emulate those elongated skull people. There are some theories out there. Some say that it is to prevent injury from the evil winds, which is pretty interesting. And where was that? I had it pulled up here, but it was basically like the evil winds, like the evil spirits, so to say, right? I guess like because your head was elongated, that it made it more aerodynamic. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So it would prevent from the evil winds. It would protect young people's souls, which is why, your parents would be prone to elongating your skull, because the theory was that it would protect your young's soul.
Protect you from the evil spirits and shit. Just like certain people believe baptizing their baby makes sure that they go to heaven. And like it has nothing to do with them whatsoever. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's that drawing that was in that journal. It said that they found this mummy of this pregnant woman with this elongated skull fetus still in the womb in a cave 2 leagues from Tamara. And it says in that book, it says, and which at this moment is in our collection. But to this day, nobody's been able to find this thing. But in this journal, they said that they were sending some of these skulls and skeletons to Britain. But they just disappeared from the pages of history.
When was this found, the pregnant woman?
Up there's the drawing that was in the journal.
That's why I'm asking, is because, like, okay, did they find this through, like, some sort of scan, or did they perform a C-section, like an autopsy C-section to find this? Do we know how they got it?
It doesn't say, but I would assume
I mean, it's just the bones. You'd be able to see the bones of the baby in there, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it was like in the
decayed.
last couple of decades, they could have done like a scan and seen that. Or, I don't know.
Oh, this journal was from, it was old when we look.
Okay, so they did a full
1842.
autopsy. Oh, no, they pulled the baby out by hand. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And as far as a league, I didn't know what that meant. A league is 3 statute miles, according to this.
Yeah. And that's downward.
So 6 miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty damn close then.
That is insane. And keep this in mind, too. The mom didn't have an elongated skull. It wasn't like it was a genetic trait from mama.
No, it did have
Otherwise,
an
they would've
elongated
mentioned
skull, right? That picture you just showed was an elongated skull of the mom.
The baby had an elongated skull.
That was a drawing of the fetus.
Oh, shit. I thought that was the mom.
I didn't think of that.
No,
I
the
didn't think of
mama
that,
didn't
Jacob.
have
Yeah,
it.
didn't
Otherwise,
say
they
that.
would have mentioned it. If the mom, they would have said we found a elongated skull woman pregnant with an elongated skull baby. No. That's not what was said. This was a normal woman that was mummified. So, like, clearly there was some sort of special care given to this woman, whoever she was. But she didn't have the elongated skull. Her baby did. And this is before childbirth. So it wasn't like this baby was struggling to get out the canal or anything.
Damn. She was fucking the Anunnaki.
It just says a pregnant woman. It doesn't say that she had an elongated skull. I didn't catch that.
Damn. So the daddy had to be where that came from. Does this lead more credence to a Nephilim breeding with a human female? I kind of think it does.
That might be the best physical proof that there is that, you know, the Anunnaki came down and bred with human people.
Not the Anunnaki, dude.
Well, I mean, that's once again, it's all verbiage. You know, the ancient astronaut theorists can use that very same idea and be like, see, we told you. Aliens came down and manipulated the gene pool.
Well, yeah, but Anunnaki, I mean, that's where the Nephilim come from, right? Nephilim is just a mix of a man and Anunnaki, I thought, right?
No, Nephilim is the mix of a man and a fallen angel.
Okay, so fallen angel.
In his context, he's saying the Mesopotamians the sages and the Abkalu were heavenly beings, so therefore it's kind of like an equivalent to a fallen angel.
Well, sure, the fallen angels came down and the humans thought they were gods and they just started fucking them all. I mean, they gave different names to them, sure.
That's what I'm saying. Fallen angels, Anunnaki, it's usually said within the same pretext or context.
Gotcha. My bad.
Dude, this stuff is insane. And knowing that they were, like, not even that long ago finding these bones. Now, I don't know. I mean, were those bones, you said that they were mummified, they were wrapped, or they were just found, dug up?
It just said it was mummified, found in a cave.
But I mean, there was that one in Mexico that they had found that didn't have any kind of mummification. So I guess kind of depends on where you find it and what their culture did, or the age or day and age at which that body was buried. I mean, who knows? I don't know when mummification. I'll be honest. I don't know when mummification was like in vogue in Central America or when it fell out of fashion. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, it was the higher classes, like down in Peru. The people that had either good status or just, money, that they would have these fancy burial cloths and they would wrap them in it kind of like a mummy and stuff. So some of the mass graveyards that they found down there in Peru, these, I think they call them sijaros, but they're like basically grave robbers. Yeah. They just go out to the desert and just start digging, and that's how they found a lot of these. But a lot of these skulls that were elongated, either they weren't wrapped to begin with, or they're so old that the wraps just deteriorated. But then they find these ornate burials where they got these really fine multicolored burial cloths wrapped around them, like the one I told you about, the baby wrapping. I can actually show you a picture of that one that Joe Taylor actually had to unwrap that I was talking about earlier.
Right.
Because it was starting to smell. It had a really expensive, ornate textile wrapping around its head. And, and it was starting to decay and smell bad. And that's why the curator asked if Joe would remove it.
That's the other thing, too. For this to start smelling bad, I mean, this couldn't have been an old corpse, sample, if you will. This had to have been relatively recently deceased.
Well, the arid desert, man, it preserves stuff.
You're saying
really
when they
well.
brought the body into a human environment, it started to. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So as far as mummification goes, whenever it started and whenever it stopped, it says Egyptians stopped making mummies between the 4th and 7th century AD. So,
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about in Central America, not in Egypt.
Well,
I'm where these bodies are being found. Yeah, Egypt, they stopped doing that. It said 700 AD.
Well,
that's pretty crazy.
That's like as far as it goes, but it says when many Egyptians became Christians, but it's estimated that over a 3,000 year period, more than 70 million mummies were made in Egypt. 70 million mummies. Holy shit.
Damn.
And it says,
Look
while
at
the ancient
this.
Egyptians may be the best known mummy makers, they were not the first. And then it talks about, wait, what are we looking at right here?
This
That's
is the infant with the head binding, but look at the textile. It's got gold leaf or gold thread in it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
doubt.
What is that?
That's the wrap.
Oh,
That's the wrap of that infant.
That was
they're
at one
unwrapping.
point cloth.
Oh.
Wow. That is insane. And again, the pictures are very well put together. It's clearly why the book is $60, to be honest with you, but damn.
I'm actually shocked it's not more, to be honest with you, because that's a fucking sweet ass book. But I wanted to
Look how decayed looking that thing is.
Yeah,
and all
no
the
doubt.
red hair they found underneath.
Wow. And again, like that was perfectly preserved in the desert and was dried out, jerky style, basically. They brought it into an exhibit in pretty much any environment with any little bit of humidity over time is going to rehydrate that flesh, which will in turn kickstart more of the decomposition. So yeah, no doubt.
So does this mean, like, it has long been speculated before for all the redheads out there, are all the redheads descendants of Satan? Is that what we're talking about here, dude? Because it's always been said as like a joke, but it always seems like these motherfuckers always got red hair, dude. And it's always, you know what I mean?
I mean, didn't they just, I forget when they did the study and showed that redheads have the closest genetic assimilation to the Neanderthals or whoever our thinking man's, whatever that was. Apparently they're the closest genetic relative. I don't know, but like,
I mean, dude, every redhead I've ever met, they've always been pretty damn fiery. You know what I'm saying? Like, they always got a little extra something to them. I'm just like...
And light-skinned, like the Veracocha legends and stuff.
I mean, I've never met a boring redhead. I'll put it like that.
No, they don't exist.
Never met a quiet one either, gonna be honest.
Right. Calling out to all the redheaded cult members out there. Do you feel like the blood of Satan runs through your veins? Hit us up on, actually, you can actually just leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That'd be the best way. Or you can hit us up on Patreon or Instagram. We are on all the things and the stuff. But I want to know, like, do you feel like your blood has been tainted by the Dark One? I'm just
like
curious.
Italians, man. I've never met a quiet or boring Italian either.
No, yeah.
I don't think they make them.
Dude, you want to hear a fun fact? So it says today mummification is rare, but some places still preserve dead bodies. For example, the mummified body of Alan Billis, who died in 2011 at the Gordon Museum. It says Vladimir Lenin's body was also mummified using modern techniques after his death in 1924. So people still less than 100 years ago, I mean, that one was in 2011, mummifying their shit. That might be the way to go. Fuck the Viking send-off, dude. Mummify me.
Fuck that.
I don't know,
dude.
man. When I was reading, like as a kid, like I was always fascinated with history, but when I looked into the mummification stuff, even like in my, middle school textbooks, that just freaked me out. And they showed these depictions of these guys with these long meat hooks that they'd shove up your freaking nose, bro, and hook your brain and pull it out like a big string of spaghetti and put it in a jar. I know I'm dead, but just the idea of having my brains pulled out of my nostrils, I'm not too keen on.
Bro, there's no way they could have known they got it all. I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking here, okay? There's no fucking way these dudes pulled out the entire brain through the nostril and was like, yep, nothing else in there. We got it all. There, no way.
They could shake it.
So, well, the idea behind why you would mummify, though, it says to preserve a deceased person's body so that their soul could recognize and inhabit it in the afterlife. So you could basically preserve like your form in the afterlife if your body was mummified.
Well, that's what the Egyptians believed, basically. If they believed that they didn't put these organs, specific organs, in these jars. And if they didn't do these things, then like you wouldn't even be a whole thing, like your whole self.
You couldn't reanimate.
Right. They believe that in some way, shape, or form, your body went with you to the afterlife. And there's a lot of religions that still preach that in one way, shape, or form. Hell, I know Christians that believe that. I mean, you know, people believe different things as far as what the afterlife looks like. But I mean, the mummification was for that purpose.
What did they think if you didn't mummify it? Were you just going to be like an energy form? Like, what would
because you had a ka and a ba. The Egyptians, they believed that your spirit body was splintered, and you had a ka and a ba, and your ka was basically like your soul, but what we, I guess, conceptualize as a soul. But the ba was weird. It was a part bird, part human head type entity, and that was what took the journey, that flew through the soul journey and tried to go through these 7 gates and the judgment and all that stuff. And then the ba, if it went through everything well, would go back to the body where the ba was, and the ba and the ka would reunite and reanimate the body, supposedly.
This is where you also get Kabbalah.
No, yeah, very well could.
Wow, that would be where so for anybody who doesn't know, that would be the quote unquote oldest form of black magic to the Western world. It is the Hebrew and the Egyptian pagan pantheon god of witchcraft, so to speak, blended into one. It's basically Jewish esotericism, Jewish dark occultism in a nutshell. And to say that that was the combination, especially when we're talking about the human's spirit journey, the Kabbalah, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. It says the word Kabbalah comes from the Hebrew root of Kaf Biet Lamed, which means to receive or to accept. The word is usually translated as tradition. Hey, you never know. That is just Google AI, by the way, so I don't... Google AI, you ain't been around long enough to know this kind of shit.
Hey,
all right?
I pulled that out of my ass, but it makes sense.
A lot of stuff stems from Egypt, you know, even the alchemy, you know, the black, the land of Kim. You know,
absolutely.
The black, that was referring to the fertile soil of the Nile when the floods would come.
Yeah. And that's
it says
also supposed to be the Kabbalah.
Yeah, it says it right here as far as, you know, the people that didn't mummify their body. It says if the body was destroyed, the spirit might be lost. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know
that
what
little birdie with the human head would be flying around lost for all eternity.
That's your boy Thoth, Jacob. That's your best friend.
Yeah, that's Thoth. Him and his cum crown just, you know, giving people writing and information and shit. But I don't know why the Central Americans, the Peruvians or any of them, would have done the mummification. If that was just out of respect, if there was some sort of cultural significance, if it was for body preservation for some afterlife type of thing. I mean, who really knows? China.
That's what's so frustrating. You'll never know because of the conquistadors and the Roman Catholic Church went over there and they accepted them with open arms, thinking that they were, you know, Veracocha or Quasiquetl because it matched their legends. And they just destroyed these people. And then they were Christianizing them. I mean, and I'm a Christian, but I mean, this aggravates me to no end.
Yeah.
They went in and burnt all their writings, all of their statues, all their, you know, sacred knot tying. I can't remember what they called it. It was like kiship or something like that.
I just looked at that today. It's the only type of written language, that, quote unquote, that they could have had, and we will never be able to decipher it.
Yeah, and we lost it all because they, you know, burnt and destroyed all of their stuff to quote unquote Christianize them, and and that's why it's such an enigma, and we'll never know.
That is frustrating.
I did. I wish we could read the knot tying, dude. That is so sick. Jonathan, you ever looked into this?
What specific kind of knot tying?
So they didn't have hieroglyphic language that we know of. They didn't have a written down scroll work that we know of. The only thing that survived was these little bits, well, little, some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, of like rope or string or twine or whatever. And every so many inches, they have a certain knot tied into them. And a little bit down, it might be a different type of knot tied in, or it might be the same knot and whatever. And we don't know if they use this as a way of tracking numbers, like an abacus type of thing. We don't know if this was a way of them writing contracts or Morse code or their signature or a calendar. We have no clue what they were using this for, but we know that their entire culture was using this as some form of like a record. And we will never be able to decipher it because with their language and with their customs and with everything else, went any knowledge of what those knots mean.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's called Kipu.
Ooh, you were close, Justin.
Something like that.
My boy's on it.
Yeah, it says particularly with the Inca Kipu system, where different knot arrangements on strings conveyed numerical and even narrative information. Oh, shit.
But we have no idea what.
Dude.
And we never will. It's wild.
Just thinking about that.
The oral traditions is all we have.
Yeah.
And those could have been tainted over time.
Oh, dude, talking about oral traditions. What's that? There's a language that is about to die. And there's only 2 dudes on the entire earth that still speak it. And they refuse to speak to each other because of an old blood feud. Have y'all heard about that?
No.
It's somewhere in Central America. And I want to say Mexico, but I might just be throwing that out because it's the largest country on that part. But I know it's some ancient dialect of an ancient language, and literally only 2 dudes, both of them in like their 80s or 90s, are the only 2 guys on earth, people, human beings on earth, that can still fluently speak this language or even know it at all. And they refuse to speak it out loud because the only person they could speak it to hates each other.
That would be Manuel Segovia and Isidro Velasquez. The last 2 fluent speakers of Ayapenico, an indigenous Mexican language, who reportedly refused to communicate with each other, putting the language at risk of extinction.
Yeah. And they're not going to last another 25 years. So, like, there's another one biting the dust.
Yeah, it says the exact reason why they won't talk is unclear, but some reports suggest that they never really liked each other. That's all. They just don't like each other.
One article I found said, and they didn't go way into detail with it, but they did say it was because of some long-standing family blood feud. Now, that could have been a complete fabrication to make it all spicy. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that that's another language that's about to die. This language, although, yeah, a lot of their shit was passed down orally, they did have something. But yeah, because of the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic Church and the conquistadors, it's gone forever.
Yeah, and Brian Forrester, he has a different perspective that I'd never thought about, but you have to entertain, especially now that I've been exposed to it. But he was talking about, because he, like I said earlier in the show, he lives there. He's been down there for 30 years and assimilated with the culture and the people and the shamans and all that. He said you have to question even the oral traditions that they were, possibly tainted by the conquistadors and the Christian religion. He said, I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it's a fact, but you have to entertain and ask the question that the stories of Quetzalcoatl and Veracocha, how they were white and bearded. He said these were Catholics trying to Christianize a nation. He said, how easy would it be for them to be like, oh, this guy you're talking about, that was Jesus. Jesus was white and had a beard and a robe, and he had apostles.
Right.
And he said even when they left, the Veracocha said that they walked on the water.
Oh, shit.
And he talks about some of the legends that they have like a lot of Christian undertones.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it could very well been, the fact or the truth. He says, but, it would be very negligent if you didn't ask the question. You know,
That's what the Mormons believe.
Was these traditions altered by the Roman Catholic Church?
The Church of Latter-day Saints believes that Jesus made an appearance to the Native Americans and gave them certain lessons and traditions that had been lost at time, and then Joseph Smith found the record of it, apparently. For them to use that as a tactic to try to convert these people, the same thing that a lot of the Catholic Church did to the Gallic and the Druidic and the Nordic tribes, right? Saying, oh, you have a God that does that? Bro, we have a saint that has that exact story. It's crazy. And if you look, actually, I've seen it's like an encyclopedia set, basically, of all of the saints on record currently. There's not like only a handful. There's a fuck ton, okay? A metric fuck ton. And some of these people, guys and girls, their story is like takes up 3 front to back pages of this encyclopedia. And some of them, it's like 5 sentences. How many of those quote unquote saints existed, possibly maybe in the realm of legend, but are definitely canonized, but they were thrown into the mix to convert a certain tribe somewhere with a certain belief? Look, I mean, look, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, modern day conquistadors, I suppose. Well, look, Justin.
Well, I mean, not modern. That's back in the last crusade when they were taking on the Vikings and shit, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, not 2,000 years ago, I guess is what I was trying to say. But
yeah, I got you.
But Justin, dude, I love the fact that you brought this whole elongated skull conversation over here. I feel like I learned a shitload about especially the baby being born with the elongated skull. Like, it kind of changes what we view reality as whenever you start seeing shit like that, which is why I love it so much, because, you know, a lot of us were kind of just thinking that, hey, this reality, this matrix that we live in, it's the same. It's always been that way. But then you start to find bones that say, you know, otherwise. And I feel like that is just so cool, learning about all this kind of stuff. And I mean, Jacob, what did you think about all this?
I mean, I love it, dude, especially as like, okay, we know that they have been hiding giant skeletons. Okay, and like even bringing that up, there's a whole group of people in the academic community that will just scoff instantly. And then there's another group that are like, okay, no, but we really have been hiding the giant skeletons that are all over the earth. The elongated skulls, they're not hiding because they can't. Because there's too many of them that have been found, from everybody from grave robbers to archaeological dig teams. They can't refute them. They can't say that this was ... Yeah, there's examples clearly where this was humans that were doing this to their babies. But then what do you say about the fetuses? Right? What do you say to the children that were way too young, or the ones that are showing clear signs that they weren't human, or at least not our type of human? I mean, we know that they're repressing information. And you know me, I'm somebody that harps on the side of academia. But I'm also not so crazy to believe that they're not holding information from us. I think this is a lot of at least the parts of this that we don't know. I feel like the guys at the top, and not the shadow government, not the CIA. No, y'all, I'm talking about like the people that actually know way more than they allow us to know. I feel like they know exactly what they are and who they're from and where they're from or when. I don't know. But I believe that is also a lot of the reason why things are shaping out the way they are now. Why is the Space Force a thing? Right? Why are we as America making the certain moves that we're making? Why are they coming forward with all this crazy UFO information? Why are they still pushing vaccines? I feel like all of this really does tie in, not all to the elongated skulls, but I feel like the elongated skulls are a puzzle piece to the overall mosaic. Yeah. I mean, who's to say? Maybe these were half fallen angel DNA. Maybe these were alien. And like, that's why the Space Force is being created and all that, because those cone-headed fuckers are coming back in a couple of years, and they know that.
Could be both.
Maybe that has nothing to do with
back
anything.
In the 90s, guys. Back in the 90s, the Coneheads movie.
Yup.
Yeah, buddy.
They were telling us back then.
Maybe all of that has nothing to do with any of it, and very soon we will be finding out that the Nephilim side of things was the correct way, and that things that will be shaking out here in Israel here soon really are more dominoes falling into place for the end times. Look, there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, there definitely is. So I guess your final thoughts on this, Justin. I mean, are these Nephilim babies, Nephilim people? Like, is this something that you've grown to accept, or is there still more research to be done in order to better paint the picture?
I think with the research that's been done, I mean, there's been, everything that we can do to them that we know of. They've been carbon dated. They've had optometrists look at the eye sockets in the eyes. They've had anthropologists study the skull and measure the dimensions of the head and measure the brain case volume, the placement of the foramen magnum in the back, the absence of the sagittarial, the extra pocket holes that humans don't have for more blood flow to this bigger brain. I think the evidence is clear that there was a hybrid race that walked amongst us and was venerated as gods. You can call them a hybrid race. You could call them aliens. You could call them angels. You can call them Nephilim. Regardless what you call them, they were here.
Yes, dude. Oh, I feel like we're living in a fucking weird movie, and we're just finding all these little breadcrumbs that lead us to believe that, like, oh man, this place is just such a crazy, like place that we're in. Like, it's so as far as the idea of these cone heads, do you believe that they've all died out, or do you believe that possibly some of them are still existing?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be pretty hard to hide, man. But the genetic marker still has to be here, ever how diluted that it may be. Because we know the theory of entropy, with science, that's something we can observe. You could put an apple out on the table, and within a couple of weeks, that thing's going to start to rot. Nothing gets better with time. It only gets worse with time. And that DNA strand is not immune to the law of entropy. It's going to weaken over centuries and over time. And through interbreeding, it's going to breed itself out, and it's not going to be noticeable anymore. But that genetic marker is still going to be there.
Now, with that being said, what are your thoughts on the Giant of Kandahar? Because as Jonathan's saying, do you think that these creatures may still exist? And I agree with you 100%. It'll be very hard to hide. Extremely hard to hide. And like you're saying with the interbreeding and all these things, you're right. Genetically, it would have weeded itself out. But the same thing is to be said about the giants. And allegedly, we had one only 20 some odd years ago. Do you believe that story? Better question.
I have to, because it's my supernatural view, and how, even Jonathan was talking about how recently I've discovered how weird and strange and how little I know about this thing that we call reality.
Yeah.
And there's so many stories and testimonies of cryptid spottings, of UFOs, of spiritual entities. And yeah, of course, there's probably some people that's just making stuff up for attention, but you can't rule them all out. And all it takes is one. Mike Heiser said it, and I love it. He said, all it takes is for one person to be right, and it busts the paradigm. And if these Nephilim, elongated skull with 30% larger eye sockets and pupillary distance and predatory vision and night vision, and they were known to be cave dwellers, I think it's crazy that we're spending all this money to go out in space and to explore space, but there's 70% of our oceans have not been explored. All the caverns and caves and stuff underneath our feet have not been explored. If these things are cave dwellers and have night vision and all that stuff, it would be very simple to navigate these tunnel systems and these caves and keep hidden. And maybe these U.S. military guys just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and had an encounter.
I agree 100%, especially
possible.
Afghanistan. Their mountains and their cave systems are so vast.
Impossible
there's no
to track.
fucking way.
Right.
No way. And I mean, we have mountain ranges in America that I personally believe all of the caves and caverns have not been explored. So, like, I'm not saying this proves anything, but who's to say that these elongated heads, larger-eyed, predatory cave-dwelling entities are not still living under the earth somewhere? The crazy conspiracy joke for the longest time has been the underground civilization of the mole people, right? Ha ha ha. Maybe there was a little bit more of a kernel of truth to that than what we originally thought. Who's to say?
Justin, let the good cult members of the universe know where they can find Prometheus Lens podcast, sir.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on again. I love hanging out with you guys and having these conversations because it's all about the exchanging of puzzle pieces and ideas and perspectives, and that's how you stretch and that's how you grow, and that's what I'm in it for, man. But yeah, if you guys enjoy these type of conversations, I'm doing them over at the Prometheus Lens podcast. Just check me out. I'm at PrometheusLensPodcast.com. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere that you can consume content, and all the social media places. Just search up Prometheus Lens Podcast and you should be able to find me.
Awesome, man. Hey, we really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us tonight and talking about fucking crazy elongated skulls. I thought it was a myth for the longest time, but here we are. The proof is in the pudding, and we just so happen to be living in that pudding. So, Jacob, do you want to give some knife hands, brother?
If you haven't already, dear cult members, please, at this time, hit the 5 stars, hit the shares, the likes, subscribes, the comments, leave a post, leave a review, share us with your friends and family, share us everywhere. Here's the deal. The more activity the algorithm sees across all of our listening platforms, the more we get promoted to more potential listeners who could then become potential cult members like the rest of you fine ladies and gentlemen. And we thank you for everybody's already gone and done so. And while you're at it, go check out Meta Mysteries, Jonathan's other show. Give him the 5-star reviews, the loves, and the positive comments. Go check out Prometheus Lens on all the platforms and give him the positivity, the loves, the subscribes, the comments, the reviews, all of the things and the stuff. We thank you for everybody who's already gone and done so. And listen, y'all, this week as it's coming up on Thanksgiving, first of all, happy early Thanksgiving to y'all. But listen, real shit here. Glass is coming off. We know you're going to be sitting around the dinner table. Thanksgiving meals are going to be going down, and we know you're going to have that one crazy uncle who's had a bit too much to drink. We all have him. And he's going to start talking some anti-government. He's going to be talking about some anti-conspiracies. He's going to be just letting everybody know what he's feeling at the dinner table when no one fucking asked. We want you to send him our podcast. We want that guy to be a part of our cult because honestly, that's who we're here for, because I am that crazy uncle at my family gathering.
Hell yeah.
And we're here for all the crazy fucking aunts and uncles out there. Just saying.
And with that being said, this was another beautiful episode of The Cult of Conspiracy. And my name's Jonathan.
I'm Jacob.
And there's one very important, extremely vital piece of information we need you to learn just as soon as humanly possible. Open up that third eye.